All right. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are excited to be launching part two of our webinar series on tackling the labor shortage using retention. This is something that we hear a lot about, we get a lot of questions about, and we're definitely seeing a lot more interest from our clients on, hey, how do I make sure that I keep the great talent that I have and I don't lose them to another company or another organization? So, we are going to be talking about one aspect of that today, specifically employee benefits. And so, just a quick introduction. I have a couple of slides here that I'm going to share at the very beginning of our day today. So we have our panelists joining us: Jeff Evans from USI Insurance Services, Matt Potosnak from Siebert and Associates, and Mike Vereb from Hub International. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to have them introducing themselves here in just a moment. Just a little information about Decision Associates. If you're not familiar with us, we are a business consulting firm located right here in Erie, Pennsylvania. And you can see along the right-hand side there the list of different services that we offer. Elizabeth and I represent the Talent and Organizational Performance Practice, or the TOP practice. Yes, we created that acronym on purpose.
Yeah.
So our part of the firm, we handle all of our executive search services, our individual, coaching, training and development. Everybody in the firm does strategic planning. We also do some cultural transformation services. So lots of great things to help organizations and their teams be better. And as you can see, that really ties closely to our mission. That's something that we all feel passionately about, is to challenge our clients to think differently and achieve new heights that they never thought were possible. So with that, I will briefly just introduce myself for anybody who wasn't on the session last time. My name's Amanda Kaczurka. I've been with DA for a little over 2 years now, and my background prior to coming to Decision Associates was really in economic development and marketing. So I've worked for several different organizations in the area on a lot of different projects, and really found passion in helping organizations think differently and find new ways to achieve their goals. And so my master's degree from Gannon is in organizational leadership. And so I've been really fortunate to be able to use that, what I've learned, and my experience in the work that I do for DA today. So that's me. Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself.
Sure. So good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Cipolla, and Amanda and I work very closely together on the top team. Like she stated, I've been with Decision Associates about 4.5 years, and I originally am from Buffalo, New York, born and raised. Previous to working at Decision Associates, I have many years of experience, cumulatively almost about 25, in fact, of experience working in various roles in more of a traditional HR and talent development executive roles for companies that have been everything from a smaller organization with only about, a few hundred employees, all the way up to global organizations with tens of thousands of employees all throughout the world. So I'm really excited to be here with you today, and you'll have our contact information from all the follow-up if you are interested in continuing the conversation or picking our brains on anything relative to what we're talking about throughout this series. Thanks for joining us.
Great, thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, we have 3 panelists joining us today. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves before we jump into the content. So Jeff Evans, if you would like to go first, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Evans. I'm with USI Insurance Services. Been doing this for about 15 years. I'm born and raised in Erie. And a little bit about USI. We are a national premier employee benefits and property casualty advisory firm. We have a pretty good presence in Erie, and then we also have a good size office in Pittsburgh.
Awesome, thank you. Next up, we have Matt Potosnak.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Potosnak, and I'm a benefits consultant with Siebert and Associates. I was also born and raised in Erie, and I'm happy to still call it home. I'm married. I have one daughter who is 9 years old, and I have one dog who's 3 years old. And for the past 21 years, I've worked with employers managing their employee benefit programs. So a little bit about Subert. Subert's an independent, privately owned insurance brokerage and consulting firm. Organization's over 50 years old, and we have over 120 employees in 4 locations. We specialize in 5 areas of risk: employee benefits, which is what I'm a part of, commercial lines, surety bonds, professional, personal lines, and then 401k. And to sum up what kind of Subert does is our benefits approach is to work with clients to identify inefficiencies and opportunities by using data to remove wasteful spend from their budget. Then you have the ability to reinvest in your organization by implementing creative total rewards packages and address issues like salary compression, plan attractiveness, employee retention, and turnover.
Awesome. Thank you. Michael Vera, bringing us home.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Vereb. I'm the Vice President of Employee Benefits for Hub International here in Erie. Hub is the world's 5th largest insurance broker. We have approximately 500 offices nationwide with about 13,000 employees. Locally here in Erie, Hub acquired Hubbard, Burt, Carley, and Weber a little over 6 years ago, along with our TPA BAI, who you may be familiar with from the self-funded dental program that they have in place. We have about 50 employees here in Erie. I specialize in new business development for organizations of 50 or more employees, looking for people that are maybe looking for an alternative premium financing model, but we do have employees that work with organizations all the way down to 10 employees. So thank you very much for inviting me today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. All right. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we dive in. One, as we mentioned, if you'd like to have your camera on today, we would love to see your faces. We want this to be an interactive session. So to that point, first of all, thank you to those of you who submitted some questions ahead of time for our panelists. We appreciate that. And to anyone who, as we go through today's content, if you have any questions, feel free to use, it's under the reactions tab in your Zoom window, the raise hand button. If you have a question, just click that so we know that you have a question that you'd like to ask, and we can call on you and make sure you get a chance to ask that. So with that, we're going to jump in. So we're going to pose our first question here to Jeff. And so, Jeff, what we would love for you to share with us is how can an organization determine what types of benefits are actually going to be of interest to their employees?
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for letting me go first, setting the bar low for you guys. So I would say in response to this question, I would say there's 2 main strategies that you've really got to consider. First would be benchmarking. So benchmarking, if you're not doing it as an employer, I think that you're really missing out. There's a lot of benchmarks out there on a national scale. You've got to make sure that that benchmarking data is relevant to you as a size, to you as an industry, to you as a location. So there are a lot of good benchmarking services out there. We actually offer a benchmarking study every year that our clients find a lot of value in. But you've really got to make sure that it's dynamic information as well. So it's being able to maybe pivot or understand different cuts of data where you can compare what your benefits are, how they stand in comparison to competitors. A competitor would be like a similar industry or where you seem to be maybe gaining or losing some people. I would also say you've also got to consider indirect competitors. And what I mean by that would be maybe an industry or a business that you suddenly seem to find yourself attracting a lot of people from, or maybe losing a lot of people to. So with that, I would say if you're on the losing side of that equation, make sure that you're doing exit interviews. Make sure that you're really getting your last opportunity to grab some information, ask people why are they leaving. What is it about the benefit package that may be insufficient, or again, the reason why they found the new employer benefit package to be more appealing to them? Second strategy would be surveys. make sure that they are anonymous. You've got to make sure that they're anonymous. No one wants to be the person to speak up, and then one way or another, their name gets dragged through the mud. I can honestly tell you, if my employer asked me to complete a survey, I would be hesitant maybe to be as forthcoming and honest in my feedback, constructive criticism as possible. Or you may want to, depending upon the size of your company, maybe have like a benefits committee or a champion committee is what I like to call them. Have a few people that are really vested and interested in making a change, in representing the rest of the staff on their behalf. Ask open-ended questions, get feedback, provide feedback, gather the data from the people, and then come back to them and say, this is what we found. This is what we think we can do. This is what our budget will entail, and so on. And then lastly, you've got to make changes. So once you get that survey data, once you get that feedback, you've got to follow through on it. If people feel like they're speaking up, if people feel like they're giving their honest opinion and you're not acting on it, then you're actually going to do quite the opposite, and you're going to really burn the bridge with that with your people. So open communication, ongoing feedback, willingness to adapt and change.
Jeff, one question that I have in response to what you just said, do you recommend employers share the results of the feedback, the cumulative results of the feedback, which led them to make any changes that they may make in response to it?
I think that would be great. I think it would be great for everyone to see the commonality among all of those folks, depending upon the different generations that are within the workforce. And also, I'm always a big proponent of speak up, because odds are the people that you're working with, the people that you're working alongside with, they may have the same concerns or questions that you may have, but they're just as afraid to speak up as you are.
Right.
So you actually may build some fellowship or some connection among your team if they suddenly find that they're all dealing with the same issues or have the same concerns. It'll bring everyone together as a communal aspect. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Matt or Michael, anything to add to Jeff's answer?
No, I agree with what Jeff was saying. The being transparent is very important, and definitely having a commitment from your leadership team on what you want to do from the survey. So
I completely agree with what Jeff said about sharing the information. Be selective of the information that you're sharing to encourage participation in these surveys moving forward. If they see that their voice was heard from the first one, they will be more willing to participate in whether it's benefit discussions or any future surveys.
Okay, great. All right, so our next question, we are going to hear from Matt Potosnik. And so Matt, for that question, for any employer who doesn't currently offer benefits, or maybe one who's looking to change the benefits that they're offering, how does that process start, and how do they determine, what is feasible and what's going to make sense?
Well, whether if you don't offer any benefits or you currently offer something and you're looking at expanding or making changes to it, the first thing I would do is start asking some questions and start thinking about a few things. And I would start off by saying, how do we make our employees' lives easier, simpler, and more enjoyable here? What is the industry offering? What does our workforce look like from a multi-generational standpoint? What is the data showing me that my employees want? And what does your total rewards package look like right now? So first off, you need to understand that finding a one-size-fits-all benefits approach, it's nearly impossible now. So what matters to me as an employee is completely different to you. So how do we do all this? How do we start to build a holistic total rewards package? First thing I would do is determine what your goal is and decide on a budget. Are we looking at growing? Are we looking at cutting costs? Are we focusing on attracting employees? So from a leadership standpoint, you have a common goal in place. And then I would benchmark your current total rewards package to the industry. How do you compare to your competitors? Are you in line with what the industry is offering? And you need to take into account the industry to get a better understanding of where you are currently, because you have to look specific, because a trucking company is going to have a completely different package than a nonprofit, bank, or school district. And then after you have some of that data, next conduct a demographic analysis to understand and know your workforce from that multi-generational standpoint. So right now there are four different types of generations. Sometimes you have 5 working for you, and they all have varying backgrounds. They have varying experience. They value different things. They have different interests. So to give you an idea on what your workforce is going to compare to a benchmark, like from a multi-generational standpoint, you know, silent generation, you're going to be less than 1% of your workforce. Baby boomers are going to be around 19%, Generation X 35%, millennials 39%, and then Generation Z is around 6%. It's going to be different for everybody, but that's what the benchmark is telling you. And that Generation Z is only going to grow, and they have those types of interests. So you want to take that into account. So compare that demographic analysis data to this benchmark while taking into account the industry you are in and where you are located, because that's important too. But I want to point out that, you know, an individual's age and what in the generation that they're in doesn't necessarily predict what benefits they'd be interested in either. So knowing your multi-generational information is only a good starting point. It's basically a guide. So you can't assume you know what they want. So once you have that data on your workforce, you understand your makeup, you know, how do you compare to that benchmark? And then we do a detailed survey to your employees on what they would be interested in seeing offered from you. You need to understand your employees and try to meet their needs. So then move forward with what you plan on changing or offering in your total rewards package to meet your goals and your budget that you have already decided on. So to give an example how to tie this all together, let's say your goal as a company is to expand the benefits package to retain employees. You set a budget for this. You conduct your demographic analysis, and from that, you find out that your company is much higher in the benchmark with millennials and Generation Z employees than everybody. So one thing millennials and Generation Z employees are looking for is a much more robust mental health benefit, much more than just like an EAP you're offering, or even what the benefits are offering through the health plan. So you know this data and you have it, and you know this is very important to their generation. So then you survey your workforce and do a specific survey, kind of tailoring that survey to the generations. And you confirm through the survey, yes, that is actually something that they want. They're interested in that. So you benchmark versus the industry and see that only 25% of the companies in your industry are offering something like this, a more robust mental health benefit. So you already committed to changing it. You're already committed to working on your total rewards package. It falls within your budget, and you agree to offer this benefit. So what you have done now is you have done something to your package to help attract and retain employees, help with culture, and be a leg up on your competition too. So to recap, know the goal, set a budget, understand your workforce from a multi-generational standpoint, understand what your industry or your competition is offering, and use data to survey and understand what your employees want.
What's the best way or method, for someone to benchmark because that's a big piece of it, a big part of it. And we have organizations from all different sizes and all different, participants with access to varying degrees of resources to benchmark as you recommend. So what are some simple ways to do that, or simple resources out there?
As Jeff mentioned, there's a lot of benchmarking going on out there. There's a lot of vendors that offer that. There's a lot of insurance agencies that offer it. Our consulting firm has a benchmarking system, Jeff's does. So what I would do is just make sure that you're being specific, right? Can we break this down to your region on where you're located? maybe even where your employees are located. If there's branches spread out, maybe you're in Ohio and New York, and you want to include that. And kind of also break it down to your employee size, right? You don't want to look at a benchmark of a company that has 3,000 employees compared to, you know, and you only have 35 employees. It's going to be completely different on what you're offering. So you kind of want to be specific in regards to location and your group size, and then and I would just take advantage of maybe some different benchmarks out there and find out which one will be able to give you that type of specific data.
Great, thank you.
One thing that I would just add, kind of related to what we spoke about last week in our session, you know, Matt made the point that when you're thinking about generational interest in different types of benefits, the importance of, you know, using that as a starting point and not, you know, solely basing that on generalizations that you're making about a generation. We encounter this all the time. I'm sure all of you do too. Where you have, you know, oh, they're, you know, Gen Z, they only care about mental health services. Well, that may be one thing that they care about, but maybe they have a different priority that they place higher than that. And I think just going back to the point we made last week about, you know, there are different things that happen throughout each generation's lifetime that help them to see things differently, to shift their priorities. And so I would also say that you don't, it's not a one and done survey. It's not a, you know, ask them once and then never ask them again, because as people's priorities change, the benefits that they're interested in are going to change as well. So just make sure you keep that in mind. Jeff or Michael, anything to add to that?
One thing that I would kick in is if you are going to be making substantial changes to the benefits package to, as the question said, to change it up, communicate with the employees in advance and explain why that we're doing it. It could be strengthening the package. It could be reducing some coverage, but as much anxiety as HR managers and CFOs have going into renewal season on what a carrier might come back with, your employees have that same anxiety each year if you're doing an open enrollment meeting, wondering how much more this is going to cost them. So be upfront with them, explain why, align with goals of the companies that they've established to truly make this a benefit to attract and retain the quality employees.
Great.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Mike. And Stacy dropped a question in the chat box, and I'd like to read it aloud and open it up to whichever of the three panelists who are joining us today would like to respond. But other than EAPs, Stacy is asking, what other mental health benefits are you seeing employers offering?
I'll say that they're from an EAP or just mental health services, behavioral health. There's multiple levels that you've got to consider from a standpoint of vendors or services that can treat acute situations or just broad situations. So EAPs, an employee assistance program, those are broadly, a lot of times automatically included in your benefits. From a fully insured standpoint, a lot of them are automatically baked in. If you're self-funded, it's something that you can add in or you can enhance or buy up. So I'll give you a quick example for a specific vendor. Spring Health would be a great vendor that we have a lot of experience with. That is a buy-up program. So to kind of give you an example of an EAP, EAPs are very generally significantly underutilized. You can put it out there, you can put a poster in the lunchroom, make people aware of it. A lot of times people are apprehensive about engaging with an EAP because they think it's only for behavioral health. I often tell people, I almost challenge you to call the EAP for any life event that you're dealing with, whether it's marital problems, drug and alcohol abuse, financial issues, you're in the middle of a lawsuit. I mean, there's so many different issues that you can engage in EAP with. On the other hand, there's this other program called Spring Health, where you buy up the program and it's more of a proactive vendor. So they will actually reach out to the people, engage with them. They will match those people with a therapist or whoever based upon if they prefer male or female, or LGBTQ or whatever, all these different variables that are out there. So to answer your question, Stacy, that would be really something that you've got to consider as an organization of, do we have a real need for it? Are we seeing it in our claims if you're self-funded or you have access to claims data? And then if you have people saying, I engaged with the EAP and I was told that I have a 2-month wait to see a therapist. Okay, now it's something that you've really got to engage an outside party or a more aggressive vendor in that case.
Thank you, Jeff. And Tiffany had dropped in the chat box that she was reading that cell phone allowances are becoming more popular, or just even general tech allowances to account for the amount that we have to use our personal devices. She wanted to know if the three of you are seeing that. And also, are there any other new type allowances becoming more common?
Yes.
I dropped in the box that I am hearing more, especially, to be truthful, in markets, because we don't just work in the Erie market, we work in markets really all over, all over the tri-state area of New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and even all over the country. But we are seeing an increase in general wellness allowances being granted for employees to use at their own discretion for self-care. For example, massage, spa, fitness training, yoga, etc. What are you three seeing?
So so I'll add that you're mentioning wellness here, and wellness is not just going and getting biometric screening and going see a doctor anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we can tie in the mental health benefit into wellness,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a portion of it. So for mental health, some vendors out there offer one-on-one coaching, and they'll coach your leadership team. They'll help with your employees, and you're kind of doing a one-on-one with them throughout the entire year. And we have some vendors that do that. Subert actually offers that to their employees, and we utilize Boone Health, and they do a really good job with that. But tying that back into wellness and, reimbursing for cell phones and everything, it goes into, again, understanding what your employees are going through, right? And what are they dealing with? So from mental health, it might not just be stress of the job. It might be that I have a parent that I'm caring for at home, and I have children I have to care for too. And I'm trying to manage all of this. And it's a lot on my mental health. I have financial problems. Inflation's up, right? I'm struggling to make ends meet and living paycheck to paycheck. You're offering to pay for my cell phone. That's helping me by doing something like that. And that's helping my mental health. It's taking one thing off of my mind. So that's how I would tie that into that.
One thing to add is I would make sure that your health insurance benefits align with what your goals are for mental health. We've had years and years and years of getting down co-payments or making certain services not subject to the deductible. Part of the Affordable Care Act was providing annual physicals, was providing the annual OBGYN appointments. Yet many companies still have in place old antiquated benefit grids that may make mental health services subject to their plan deductible. And that could be a hurdle from people getting the care that they need if they must satisfy a $2,000 deductible prior to receiving any of the benefits.
Absolutely. All right, great. So we're going to move on to our next question. So we're going to have you, Michael, answer this one. This was one that was submitted ahead of time. As an HR leader, how can I get buy-in from the executive leadership team when it comes to updating or diversifying our benefit offerings?
The fun challenge of most HR professionals. The most important thing that we try to communicate during our pre-renewal meetings is to start this process now. Unfortunately, many of the organizations looking at the lineup here are in that under 100 employee. So you're at the timing of the insurance companies to get your renewal. And if you're receiving a 15% renewal from your carrier, 60 days prior to plan renewal, the correct time to bring additional options to executive leadership is not during that window. You need to start it now, and you need to align with what the company's goals are. So when you bring a solution to the table, it aligns with what they are thinking. And the biggest thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit towards the end of it, is to start the communication, the education with the employees at this time. If you see a gap, you need to start educating them on the gap, because nobody wants to buy insurance, but they do want to solve problems. They do want to protect their family, but nobody wants to be sold insurance when you're going through an open enrollment meeting. So if you find out if they are having issues with retention of current clients that both Matt and Jeff have talked about, if you can provide that feedback, hey, we've lost 4 employees this year. Each of them have gone to competitors. Each of them mentioned, or half of them have mentioned, the size of our deductible, or that we don't offer a disability program. That is data. Data drives the decisions, especially in senior leadership, that you can provide them with an answer to a problem that you're going to have, not just coming in and saying, hey, I want to put voluntary life in this year.
Mhm. Awesome, thank you. Matt or Jeff, anything to add?
Yeah,
Go
go ahead, Jeff.
ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
I would say, as an HR professional and trying to appeal to a CFO, controller, no offense to the financial minded folks that might be on today's call, but the main thing that you've got to do is you have to anticipate their concerns. You have to anticipate the ROI, or the issues that they may push back with, or immediately kind of their gut instinct consider we can't afford it, or it's really not a priority at this standpoint. Because again, as a CFO, my main focus is the books, the profit and loss. They're not really worried necessarily. Not everyone is concerned about the feel good mentality or the camaraderie of the employees of the team. So you've really got to focus on the financial impact. You've got to develop a business plan. You've got to be prepared to approach the CFO or the team and say, this is going to benchmarking. This is what I've found that our competitors or like-minded employers in our space are doing. I've already figured out the cost. I've already determined that this will be an affordable option that our employees will find a lot of value in, and then tie it all back into emphasizing how this is going to attract and retain top talent, increase employee satisfaction, improve productivity, and really add to the overall employer's brand and reputation. And how that, again, tying it all into financial impact, how that's going to come back around and really mean dollars for the organization.
I would add, to piggyback off of that, understanding your workforce, what your employee wants, using that data that you're gathering, and also know your audience. So understand the roles and interests of your leadership team. A CEO is going to care about employees. They're going to care about their well-being, but they're also going to care about the bottom line. So if you know, hey, this is what our workforce is made up of, this is what they're interested in and want, this is what we're going to get out of it, right? From savings or productivity, or we're going to lower retention numbers because of it, or we're going to be able to attract talent because of it. And you're able to present all that, tie it all together. That's how I would present it to a leadership team.
Great. All right. Moving on to our next question. Jeff, we're coming back to you. This was another one submitted ahead of time. I represent a small organization with a limited budget. What are some options my organization could consider that would differentiate us from larger companies who can afford to pay more and who have more significant benefits packages?
So I love this question because personally, this is how I got into the business. This is how I cut my teeth. We used to be a family-owned agency when I growing up, and when I graduated from school, we used to be. If anyone's familiar with Evans Capital Management, that was my father's business, and again, that's how I got my start in the industry. So I can tell you from the standpoint of personal experience, and then also working with other employers that are on the smaller end, that are fighting against the, the typical David and Goliath sort of scenario of how to attract and retain people. So for a small organization, I would say embrace being small and being nimble and flexible. And you can pilot different programs, or you can introduce new programs really on a whim. You don't have to cut through all of the red tape or the approaching a board or anything like that we spoke about earlier. If you get some good feedback from your key people and you think that it would improve the workplace, go for it. I mean, and really embrace that nimbleness. I can tell you personally, what we used to do as a small agency is we used to buy gym memberships for our people. So this will be a funny one. We used to buy club memberships. We actually used to purchase Sam's Club memberships for our people. So you've got to, I mean, you can be creative. You can kind of do some goofy things when you're small. I remember my dad used to do pay advancements. If there was someone in the organization that was having a baby or buying a house for the first time, having that close connection with the owner or the director or the boss, that really ingratiates people within the organization. So I would say, you can do all sorts of really creative, fun things like flexible work arrangements. And I know that we're living in a virtual world and not every organization can do virtual work, but try to be flexible. Maybe on a Friday afternoon, surprise everyone and say, hey, we're cutting out early. The weather's nice outside. It's summertime. Go home and enjoy the rest of the day with your kids or your family. Professional development opportunities, wellness initiatives, casual dress code. And then I would also say, do a lot of team building exercises in your spare time or on the weekend. Engage those people's family. That is a big one. That, from my experience, that really tied in your employees with the company. You can't get that connection anywhere else with a large employer. They can try as best as they can, and certainly there are organizations out there that put more emphasis on this than others. But as a small, close-knit organization, you'll be involved in family matters, and you'll be invited to birthdays and holidays and weddings. And I mean, we went through all of that. And I can say that our people were fiercely loyal to our organization because of those connections. Mm-hmm. And then if I could throw out maybe one product for this sort of a space would be an ICHRA, ICHRA. It gets into alphabet soup when you start talking about insurance. But for small employers, an ICHRA is a really good kind of entry into employee benefits and allows you to be flexible and nimble, where you can offer an a la carte benefit package. Mm-hmm. Again, compared to larger organizations that you just don't have that financial capability.
Another thing that we have seen and we have personal firsthand experience with, which is a little bit more extreme for some organizations, it's going to make your heads pop, but is unlimited vacation time as well. Totally. And it's kind of interesting and funny because when we have the unlimited vacation time, on average, we see only about, within the ballpark of 3 to 4 weeks a year being taken. Mm-hmm. So it's not like people are taking 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It's not like that. But that really means a lot and goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. And kind of in that same breath, though, you just want to be cautious with offering unlimited vacation, because there have been plenty of studies that have shown that some people actually take less vacation when it's unlimited, because there's a lot of ambiguity, and then you get into situations where, if the person is working for a supervisor who never takes vacation, then they're feeling like they have that same requirement. So a lot of companies that offer unlimited vacation have started making a mandatory minimum of vacation that you have to take. So yes, it's unlimited, but you have to take at least 2 or 3 weeks, through the course of the year. So just I'm a huge advocate of unlimited vacation, just as long as you make sure your employees are actually using it.
Tiffany is asking, how do you feel about making it mandatory to take a week off per year? Tiffany, I think that's likely what Amanda was just alluding to in terms of having a mandatory minimum. And then Stephen asked, how do you find the balance of accountability with the staff on unlimited vacation? I have to say, I'll answer that question because I've worked places where previously and currently where that's the case. But to be honest, that all comes down to having the appropriate people in the leadership roles who are not only having, meaningful, trusted relationships with their team and truly knowing them and recognizing so they can head it off at the pass if there is not an appropriate use of vacation time, whether it be too little or too much. And it really just has to do with equipping your leadership team to best be able to manage that. You certainly wouldn't want to just roll it out and hope for the best. You would want to make sure that you equipped your leadership team with some boundaries and guidelines and resources and support so they could appropriately be that frontline managing it.
Absolutely.
If I could add one thing, as far as a product that small organizations can introduce to align themselves with much larger organizations that may not break the budget, would be looking at something along the lines of a SIRA, a spousal incentive HRA program, that if you feel your organization can't compete with such and such school district, such and such union, such and such large employer out there, don't. Put a product in place that will allow your employee to go on the spouse's plan, and you instantly make that plan better, because under a spousal incentive HRA, your employee will pay all your deductibles, all your co-pays, all your co-insurance. We do those at Hub for our employees, and they're one of the most popular programs that we're putting in place right now. I actually participate in the SIRA with Hub. So though we are on my wife's insurance, it now becomes the best plan in the world because I have no deductibles, I have no co-payments, I have no co-insurance. And from a company standpoint, instead of my employer funding $500 a month or maybe $750 a month in premiums, they may be covering some expenses. Deductibles in Northwest Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, Western New York are not too bad right now. But even in a bad year that my daughter tore ACL and had $1,500 deductible and had over her PT, which is about another $1,500, my company paid those. They paid $3,000, and I feel like I won because I had nothing out of pocket. So that's a big benefit of working it with my organization.
All right. So next question, and we have this one going to Matt. How can team members who are in leadership roles help their employees understand the value that's included in their benefits package?
It's a really good question. And I think the key word in this question is value. What do employees value? What do they appreciate that you, the employer, offers to them? From a compensation and benefits standpoint to culture and how they're treated at work. I mean, this kind of ties into what I talked about on question 2. I'm going to start sounding like a broken record a little bit. But, again, understanding your workforce and listening to them and understanding their needs and wants will help you understand what they value. So, what are your employees going through in their lives? And how are we as a company going to help make their lives better and show how much we care about you? We value you as an employee, and here is how we are doing it. So total value statements do a good job of showing the value from a compensation and benefits standpoint. I think they do a good job physically showing an employee, here is what we are offering you from a compensation and benefits standpoint. You're showing the employee, here's your salary, medical coverage, dental, disability, life, PTO we offer, phone reimbursement, wellness, 401k, everything, right? You're tying it to a dollar amount. Here's what we are investing in you as an employee. It is a total compensation statement. But the thing about that is it's only one portion of it. You know, you have to look at this from a holistic approach. This is just showing your benefits and compensation. You need to show how much you value an employee in other ways by showing you care about them and you understand their needs. So what actions are you taking as a company to demonstrate how you value your employee? You know, this is where knowing your multi-generational workforce and tying into that again helps. And I hate to keep going back to millennials and Generation Z employees as examples, but millennials are a huge chunk of your workforce now, and Generation Z is only going to be growing. Now's the time to kind of do things to anticipate what your new workforce is going to be coming in like with Generation Z, right? And that's kind of why I'm concentrating on that. But millennials and Generation Z employees, they care very much about company culture. They care about feedback and recognition, professional development, flexible work arrangements. They care about transparency from their leadership, from the top down. So Generation Z employees sometimes care so much about company culture, they'll take less pay to work for you. It's not, salary's not super important to them. It's where they're working and what their purpose is that they're working for. So what are you offering from that standpoint to show them how much you care and value them? And most importantly, stay consistent, be transparent with it, and help them understand that you are doing something. So I can give two examples here. I think they're good examples. One is an example of an employer. What he wanted, you know, it's a CEO of a company. What he wanted to do was take an extra room at the company and basically turn it into a gym. And he was thinking, okay, I'm going to turn this into a gym because this is what my employees want. I'm going to buy all the equipment. I'm going to put everything in here. It's going to help with wellness. It's going to help with stress. My employees are going to love it. It's going to help with productivity and everything. It turns out the employees actually don't want a gym. All they want is just a room that they can take a break in, decompress, eat their lunch, something simple like that, and much more less expensive than putting in a whole gym, right?
Yeah.
And then another example is doing something simple for them. So here's an example is, you know, inflation's high right now. It's been high for 3 years. Gas is up, groceries are up, you know, the cost of everything's up. And maybe it's something simple you're going to do for their employees during this time. And you're going to purchase grocery gift cards or gas gift cards for them. And you're going to give them to them quarterly and throughout the entire year until inflation starts to cool a little bit, until their lives start to get a little bit better from the cost of everything. You know, it's just little things like that you can be doing. So I guess in you know, to recap all of that, you know, actions speak louder than words, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's a great point, Matt, to tie back to what one of the stats we showed in last week's presentation, which, you know, it was one of the studies, I think it was the one from Mercer, that showed, you know, work environment is the highest reason that the folks who were surveyed cited for what impacts their decision to stay with an organization. It wasn't pay. You know, it was the work environment. So to Matt's point, definitely having that focus on culture and, you know, thinking about even your company's core values and how are those reflected in the benefits that you're offering to your team.
And to just add one more thing, Amanda, it's you know, you're talking from an HR standpoint. The three of us are talking from a benefit standpoint. It all ties together now.
Yeah.
It's not just the you know, like the old days, hey, we just have a health plan and here it is, and we offer you 401k and that's it. It's this discussion, it's a holistic approach. You're looking at it from all kinds of different angles on what you can do. They all kind of tie into one another now.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Michael or Jeff, anything to add?
I agree with everything that Matt said. I would stress, as the question said, the people in the leadership roles, they are going to be the first people the employees talk to. By the time they get to the HR manager's desk, they may have been venting on something for several weeks or several months.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure that those people, whether it's a leader on the floor, the head of an accounting department, they have an understanding of the benefit package and what you're trying to do for your employees. You need to have them as your adversary so that they can come back to you, so you're not inundated with it, become a complaint department.
Yeah, like an ambassador for you almost.
100%.
Yep.
I'll just say this really quickly,
Yeah, go
leadership training. You've got to train leaders on how to be empathetic. And going back to the generational differences, it can be difficult if you have leaders that are in, for example, you've got a 70-year-old hospital office executive dealing with a female nurse that's fresh out of school, that's a new mother. That generational difference they're not going to have the same priorities. So being able to train the leaders in those different scenarios and helping them be empathetic and understand these different generations, or just where people are different in their lives. I mean, I say this all the time. Sometimes I've got 2 kids of my own, and I'm like, my parents, do you remember what it was like to have kids? I need a little help here, or, come through for me. And I think that just kind of gets lost as you go through phases in life.
Absolutely. Yeah, the empathy piece is huge. All right. Very good. So, Michael, we're coming back to you. What are the top creative benefits? And I have creative in quotation marks because creative, I think, means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So the top creative benefit offerings your clients have been inquiring about.
It's an excellent question. And we get this from HR managers, professionals all the time. What is the best type of policy I should put out? Design the best program possible. That's different for every organization. It's also different for every employee within your organization. So get an understanding that perhaps the medical insurance, I would say one of the biggest changes on the health insurance side is, I think Matt referenced it earlier, is more options. A $1,000 deductible may be very, very attractive to an employee who is in their 60s with health challenges, that they know that limits their exposure. But to a healthy 25-year-old employee who doesn't have any chronic conditions out there, they may be looking for a much higher deductible, take upon a little bit of risk, even narrow their network of doctors they could go to, because that's not a concern, and there's always open enrollment next year. But if they can use that money to buy up on disability insurance, or if they could use that money to buy some additional benefits, and now we start talking about products in the marketplace that are coming about. Asira is one. That's a big creative benefit that we talked about earlier. Identity theft has become incredibly huge. It's not expensive. We've all seen the LifeLock and the different product commercials out there, but don't take the time sometimes to sign up. And if you could do it through your employer, because from the employer's perspective, God forbid anything happens to one of your employees, they're not going to be fixing that problem on their time in the evening. If they have access to a computer and a phone at their desk during the day, it's going to be all encompassing, because it's terrifying if you get your identity hacked, and it's going to take them away from their job. Third party it, get it over to somebody else, let them worry about that. Another big one that's kind of working its way across the country right now is long-term care. Long-term care is a crisis. It is a big, big problem. And there has been some bills passed out in Washington, and there's one on the floor right now in California, of making this a requirement that if an employee does not have long-term care insurance, they're going to provide a payroll tax. Now, I'm not a big fan of this, because the amount of protection that they're getting out in Washington right now, it's a $35,000 maximum lifetime benefit. And if anybody on this call has ever had a family loved one in a long-term care facility, $35,000 does not go far. So it's providing what I feel is a little bit of a false sense of security, but it's going to work its way across, and it's going to be an option that's out there right now. One of the biggest things I would suggest you do is we've talked about benchmarking. Another one that's out there is called a persona analysis, or having a company do an analysis of your employees. And it goes into what they can afford and what gaps may be within your program right now. So that analysis will specifically identify within your organization where those gaps are. For many of it might be on a disability end. Maybe people aren't buying it at all, so you got to put something in. Or maybe you have 25% of your employees up against the plan max. We just did a review for a company the other day, and it was over 50% of their employees were up against the max. That provides a big gap for you out there.
Absolutely. Another thing, and I would be interested to have you, Michael, or any of the other panelists speak to this. One thing that was brought up at the SHRM Talent Conference back in April that I attended was, a lot of companies are willing to offer, coverage, at least partial, if not full coverage of tuition for employees who, want to go back to school or get an advanced degree. But the presenter I was listening to kind of flipped that on its head and said, okay, if you're willing to pay the tuition, why aren't you willing to offer them some funds toward paying off student loans? Or
Mhm.
what are you seeing with that?
I love the concept of when you identify what your budget is towards the employee and give them the choices to spend it as they wish. I don't like to dictate, we're only doing tuition reimbursement or we're only doing student loans, because everybody may be in a different situation. If you're going to pay off somebody's student loans and someone says, well, darn, I took this job to work my butt off so I could save money to go to college, you've alienated a portion of your employees at that time. So the whole idea of coming up with a number and getting away from being, and I used to use this as a positive compliment, oh, you're a paternal employee. You consider your employees family. You just want to do everything for them. And sometimes that's not the best route. Being an educator is much better. Letting them know how they can best spend their money, letting them know that when a broker comes in for an enrollment meeting, so they actually understand those concepts in advance, not just for that 30 minutes that we have their attention, so that they can see as their life changes and they're going through this full continuum of working for you, their needs are going to adjust as they grow within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Right. Jeff or Matt, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll chime in on this one. So the first webinar that you hosted last week, you talked about total wellness and how it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the products that Mike's talking about here, that Jeff and myself have talked about, kind of all tie into that total wellness that you spoke
Mm-hmm.
about. It just falls in different buckets, right? We already talked about mental health and what you can do there. We kind of talked about financial well-being a little bit and doing financial planning and retirement savings programs and student loan repayment. I mentioned caregiving benefits, and that's kind of a big one just because of what the generations are going through, like Generation X dealing with their parents, and millennials even dealing with parents too that are, that need help from a health standpoint, need to take care of that. There's vendors out there that do things like that, like caregiving benefits, identity theft protection, like Mike talked about. And Stella, you said that you offer at the bank. That's awesome. I'm a believer in that one. I would just add lifestyle spending accounts. Is if I was going to mention a product here, would be that one. I don't think it really has hit Western Pennsylvania yet. I think it's still kind of fresh and not a lot of people kind of know what it is. It's very, very popular in California right now. And not to like talk for 20 minutes and dive into what it is, but it's basically you're giving, it's not tied to a health benefit in any way whatsoever. And you're basically setting an amount you're going to give to your employees and customizing it on how you want them to use that money. Do you want them to pay back their student loan with it? Do you want them to take that money and go to Starbucks and buy coffee? You can set it up that way. Like it'll help with their mortgage, whatever they want to use it for, basically, you can customize that. So I think that's going to be something that's really going to explode because it's a way to offer something to them that can impact all generations of your workforce. And then also it will help with the salary issues too. And, paying out a lot of money to get talent and stuff like that. It's a different way instead of just raising salaries and dealing with salary compression issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny because we're going back to what was in place 25 years ago. Yeah. And I remember one of my first jobs, I basically what looked like a Chinese menu to me of all these benefits my company was offering. And I was given a budget and I could pick and choose. And I sat down with my father at the time. I wasn't in the business because I had no idea what I was doing. He's like, oh, buy a higher deductible. You're healthy. You're not going to don't buy life insurance. You're not married. The only one I owed money to was him, probably at that point. You buy more disability because you're an idiot and you're going to get yourself hurt somehow. Things like that. These were the programs that were out there 25 years ago. Now we've added, I mean, the points Matt brought up were 100% accurate. We've added a lot of things to those policies moving forward and changed in that way. But this idea of giving choice back to the employees is fantastic.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right, great. So we have come to our final question, which kind of has two parts to it. And I'd actually like all three of you to speak about this. This was one that was submitted ahead of time as well. So the first part of the question is, what are your recommendations for effectively communicating to employees both what benefits are available to them and why those benefits matter? And then the second part is, how are you tweaking those communication efforts to meet the various communication styles and preferences who represent, as you know, we've been talking about this whole time, those employees who represent different generations. So Jeff, we'll have you go first.
Sure. So you got to get digital. If you're an employer that's been doing the traditional approach of printed booklets or handouts, or just kind of a once a year employee benefits meeting, open enrollment meeting, you've got to get digital. You've got to get multi-channel. So I would certainly recommend implementing an employer intranet or a Ben admin system, or there's mobile apps out there that you can house all of your benefits on a mobile app. Again, going back to the generational, everyone's got a cell phone now, everyone's got a smartphone, or at least majority of people do. There's still people that are afraid of computers. But you can really implement that digital scale and have something that's available 24 hours a day. And what that allows you to do is not only reach people that are working remotely or that aren't able to make that open enrollment meeting, but you also open up the opportunity to engage spouses. That's a big one that we always emphasize is typical guy, go to a meeting, I'm listening half the time, maybe scribble down some notes, but really I've got to make sure that my wife is involved in this decision, and having something that's digital, something that's a recorded presentation like we're doing today, that you can take home and you can review at your own time over a cup of coffee and really kind of decide what's going to be best for our family. Maybe implement some decision support tools. These are really popular with retirement plans, but you can also be very popular with if you're offering multiple benefits, multiple deductibles, or multiple types of coverages, whether it's like a different network and they're going to cover different hospitals or doctors or that sort of a thing. So as we kind of get into this cafeteria style of offering benefits, making sure that they are able to dynamically engage and help make the proper decisions on behalf of themselves and their family, that's going to be the most effective. If I can also give you some ideas on certain tools that can be helpful, I'll say Brain Shark videos. If you've never heard of a Brain Shark video, it's kind of like a PowerPoint presentation, but it's recorded and it's interactive. So it's very different than kind of just sitting back for an hour-long presentation and kind of droning on. You can pick and choose where to pick up in the video, and you can kind of have like a hyperlink to certain subjects or points in the video. Flimp videos. So these are like micro videos, really short snippets that you can send out on a monthly basis or on a seasonal basis. And they're just supposed to be quick educational shots. It's no more than 5 minutes really that an employee can sit down, get a refresh on their benefits. They can understand what a deductible is or a copay or something like that. So those are available. And then something else that I would say a lot of employers are incorporating in their benefits booklet are QR codes. If you're not on that train, man, that is taken off. So again, everyone's got a smartphone. No one really wants to carry around a booklet anymore. So if you can just kind of take a quick snippet of a QR code and have that available to you anytime, or know where to bounce around in that booklet and kind of take that snapshot of the QR code, that's super helpful.
Great, thank you. Matt.
I'll say insurance is confusing. and you can't look at all the benefits in a packet and understand everything right off the bat. And I would also add that, people learn differently. Some learn by listening. Some learn visually by watching something. Some like to read something, to learn. I know my wife, I would read something to her and she does not comprehend it at all. She needs to read it herself, right? She needs to see it and read it. That's how she learns. So I think people learn differently, and you kind of have to tackle that and address that with how you're communicating things. Completely agree with Jeff on the technology side and doing things from a technology standpoint. I think that's huge, especially with like the newer generations. So I definitely would do all that Jeff is talking about. I would add though, that communicating it and keeping it fresh throughout the year is also important. Okay, so not just, hey, it's a new hire or it's open enrollment and we have one meeting and here's everything we offer, and people don't comprehend it, right, or don't remember all of it, or it doesn't get home and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you're just reiterating, refreshing all of that throughout the year. And I don't know if you do lunch and learns like that. I don't know if you do like a type of benefits one-on-one type program or something every 6 months. However you're going to do it, post it on your intranet, text messages, whatever you're going to do. But I would definitely keep it fresh throughout the entire year. I love the idea of videos. I would also look at maybe the basics. How are we doing things now? Are we doing everything by paper? Right? Here's your enrollment form. So maybe you think about, hey, maybe we have to do like a Ben admin system or something like that to bring that technology in to make this easier for people to enroll and access information. I mean, I would that ties into technology there. And then the last thing I would give is just listening to your employees again. And I can give a great example on this one. So we had one employer and we did that survey, right? Like I talked about surveying your employees, and we built this. And we also asked questions in there in regards to, how do you want to receive communication, right? How do you want this stuff? Do you want it? Do you want videos? Do you want paper and stuff like that? Surprisingly, overwhelmingly, the workforce came back and said, email. We want this stuff through email. That's the best way we want it. So the company did that. And they also did open enrollment meetings, because I do think person-to-person talking is very important to someone, face-to-face. And so we did in-person open enrollment, in addition to doing all the email communications and doing that throughout the year. Also did, in-person open enrollment meetings, but not everybody's in person, right? People are remote and working virtually. So what we also did was we used a tool like Calendly. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but Calendly, right? And it's a scheduling tool. And what we did as consultants was blocked out time and offered it to the company, and employees can go out, use this tool and book time with us so we can do one-on-one meetings and talk with them, answer questions, and go through things.
That's great. Michael.
Yes, I'm going to add one more because I agree completely with what Jeff and Matt walked through. Brain Shark videos are fantastic. Ben admin systems are almost becoming a requirement, and I love that. HR managers tend to love that. But one other thing is call centers are making a comeback right now. And we have several clients that are enjoying these, and the employees set up a time at their convenience, often with their spouse, to call in for a specific enrollment meeting just for them, that they're much more likely to ask personal questions rather than asking health-related questions in front of a room of 50 of their employees sitting next to them, and that they can inquire about some voluntary benefits that matter to them, instead of having us rattle through 10 different products in a 30-minute, and we barely have time to breathe as we go through. But the results, the data on the call centers that we've been using has been amazing. I have one client with over 400 employees that has been at 100% for the last 2 years. We never would have got that. There are multiple small locations all over the place. It would have been a nightmare, but people are appreciating the benefits. Your company is investing so much money in these packages that they want to be communicated effectively, because you want them to appreciate it so you can attract and retain the quality employees.
Absolutely. All right, well, with that, we are coming to an end. So just a couple of things I want to hit before we close. One of the things that we talked a lot about when we were planning this session between, Jeff, Michael, and Matt and I was, they don't teach how to understand benefits plans in school. And so, handing your employees some information on here, pick an insurance plan, and their head starts spinning. They're going, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yep.
So understanding that, going back to basics has a lot of value, especially for employees that are new to the workforce. And this may be the first time they're seeing that kind of information. Just again, meeting people where they are. So one final point I'll leave with you, and it's our favorite word. Elizabeth and I use it in virtually every presentation that we give, and that word is intentional. And so approaching your benefits offerings with a mindset of being intentional, in approaching how you're communicating those benefit offerings to your team, using an intentional approach for that is extremely important. And recognizing that, to a point we made in last week's presentation about how, we're really seeing this shift to the life experience focus and that contract from employer to employee. We honor you and recognize you as a whole person. You are not just the person that you are when you're here on the clock with us. You have a whole life at home. And so how are you speaking to the total experience that your employee has in their life, and how are you supporting them in that? So with that, thank you to Jeff, Matt, and Michael. We really appreciate having you on the call today. Lots of great information. I will be sending a follow-up email today, just like I did last week, so keep an eye out for that. Elizabeth, anything to add before we close?
Amanda, I would love it if you could share maybe the benefits benchmarking survey that we provided, that we did. The data is about 9 months old now, 10 months old, which,
Yeah.
a little is aged for sure, but at least it's something if you want to share it with everybody as a follow-up.
Absolutely. I'll include that in the email. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining. We will see you same time next week, 9 a.m. on Thursday, June 1st for our third and final session on communication. We're going to be welcoming Casey Lucas Zumagala, who's going to be talking about communication, going back to basics, especially on nonverbal communication. So we're going to be hearing all about that from Casey next week. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Have a
day.
good day.